What are inclusive leaders? So you thought you were leading a cohesive team. However, as a new member, Marsha's unique behavior seems to disjoin the team. On a couple of occasions, she has challenged the way things were done, which made some members quite uncomfortable, and a few times at the team meetings, she interrupted others with her thoughts and ideas, which upset some individuals. Plus, her strong accent made it hard for some team members to understand her. Some members felt uncomfortable with her weird ideas and interruptive behaviors. Others were adaptable and thought it was good to hear fresh perspectives and to think differently. Others on the team are irritated for having to work over breaks due to people taking breaks to pray or to take long cigarette breaks, especially given your limited staff resources. You have also heard a whisper that one of your team leads feels unreasonably pressured to meet the rising cultural competence expectations, taking the diversity online modules, and that they feel like they are the new minority. To top it all this extra work without any increase in job satisfaction or pay. Your team needs an inclusive leader. What are inclusive leaders? Definitions of inclusive leaders vary. However, we can find sufficient consensus amid these variations to conclude inclusive leaders are those who rely on and motivate people with diverse mindsets, skill sets, and innovative thinking to build a high-performance organization in a fast-moving age. They take it as their leadership obligation to build an inclusive environment where every individual's unique experiences and perspectives are acknowledged and where people have a sense of belonging for being valued, recognized, and included. They make great efforts to build a fair and just culture by minimizing unconscious bias in the decision-making process. Let's start by defining the key concepts used to describe inclusive leaders. Inclusive leaders have these 5 characteristics. Hold inclusive mindsets. Develop cultural competence. Engage situations with greater adaptability. Fosters a sense of belonging. In control of their unconscious bias. Let's define each of the traits of an inclusive leader. Holding an inclusive mindset refers to a belief that everyone is talented in a unique way, thus should be treated as a valued partner. The inclusive mindset enables leaders to have a vested interest in each employee and be ready to leverage their expertise and strength regardless their race, gender, age, and ethnic background, to ensure the success of the organization. They are able to see workplace situations from others' perspectives and make special efforts to include those who might otherwise be marginalized or excluded, such as people with disabilities, people from different ethnic groups, or women who experience gender bias at the workplace. Inclusive leaders are able to recognize the impact of in-group and out-group status on employees' motivation, foster communication styles, conflict management techniques, and feedback tools to encourage participation. Works to move from a monocultural mindset to an intercultural mindset. Understand the business case for building inclusive teams and groups. Developing cultural competence refers to the ability to function and lead in a cross-cultural space. Leaders with cultural competence ensure workplace diversities are valued and differences are appreciated. They make intentional efforts to understand the difference and commonality among different cultural groups and create a shared space for diversified perceptions, values, and approaches. They can effectively manage anxiety, misunderstanding, or conflicts caused by uncertainty in cross-cultural interactions by means of mindfulness, empathy, and knowledge about cultural varieties. Inclusive leaders are able to recognize the importance of context in understanding the behaviors of others, engage in cultural humility, recognizing the strengths and values of all perspectives, evaluate personal skills or style when addressing people from different geographic or cultural regions, adapt effective thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors to reach predefined goals. Engaging situations with greater adaptability refers to agile cognitive mechanisms to enable leaders to understand there are always different perceptions to the same issue and that they must remain emotionally flexible and be ready to adopt a new paradigm of thinking under different situations in order to succeed in an ever-changing environment. They lead through self-correction and reflection and are willing to adjust their leadership style in response to what works best for the organization. Their greater adaptability also gives them an edge in conflict resolution. Inclusive leaders are able to examine one's personal style or skill against the goals, navigate individuals and groups through perceived conflict to achieve goals, engage emotional intelligence and makes adjustments as necessary to achieve the goals, recognize the need for continued growth and development through mentoring, coaching, and self-reflection. Fostering a sense of belonging. A sense of belonging at the workplace is an individual's psychological need for feeling valued, recognized, supported, and included. It brings meaning, satisfaction, fulfillment, and motivation to work. Inclusive leaders make deliberate efforts to create an inclusive environment and foster a sense of belonging by making people feel respected, included, and treated fairly, resulting in psychological safety and strong commitment. Inclusive leaders are able to create a culture environment where similarities and differences are seen as assets to the organization, aid team members in aligning their gifts and talents with organizational outcomes, develop policies, strategies, and practices that includes many voices and perspectives, especially the dissenting voice. Motivate with emotional intelligence, linking individuals' desire for safety, significance, and belonging to organizational values and goals. In control of their unconscious bias and recognizing cognitive shortcuts. Cognitive shortcuts refer to our mental processes to jump to decisions or judgments based on presumptions or unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is defined as unsupported assumptions for or against certain people or events. Its formation can be traced to various facts, such as personal experiences, beliefs, cultural backgrounds, education level, economic environment, and social activities involved. Inclusive leaders are aware that everyone has unconscious bias and that decisions made under its influence could unfairly impact employees in terms of recruiting, performance review, promotion, and succession planning, engagement, and retention. Therefore, they attempt to minimize its impacts through self-reflection, self-correction, and seeking inputs from others to ensure a fair and just culture for everyone in the organization. Inclusive leaders are able to develop awareness of the role context, culture, and society have had on the development of both conscious and unconscious bias. Develop a leadership style that is reflective of recognition of historical forms of systematic bias. Minimize micro-inequities and microaggression in their sphere of influence. Develop networks that can provide feedback as they gain greater cognitive control over their conscious and unconscious bias. We have spent some time thinking about this aspect of inclusive leaders. Let's now look at some practical examples. Okay, let's look at a few ways we can apply these concepts of inclusive leadership. We are now going to hear from a few leaders who have applied these principles in their sphere of influence.